As much as I love things like sports games and RPGs and tactical strategy games, it's really hard to overlook the platformer as something that is just kind of gaming perfection. What's going on, everybody? I'm Jay. Welcome to Square Pegs. And while there are amazing platformer games released to this day, I want to look at retro games right now, and I want to give you 10 fantastic retro platformers that still hold up to this day. We're going to make it a little bit more difficult. This isn't going to be a list of Mario games or Sonic games or anything like that. I'm going to try to hold back from traditional top-tier platformer games and give you some more maybe hidden gem type games, maybe ones that are a little bit more underappreciated than those Mario and Sonic games. All right, and let's kick things off actually on the Nintendo DS with a game I actually worked on, Henry Hatsworth in the Puzzling Adventure.
It may or may not have been my ulterior motive to feature a game I worked on this list, but forgive me for that, because I do think Henry Hatsworth in the Puzzling Adventure is one of the single greatest platformers you've never played. This released on the Nintendo DS, and it does a blend of both an amazing platformer and a fantastic Match 3 game that works on both the top and bottom screens of the DS. Now, the bottom screen is going to constantly be moving, and as the blocks slide up the screen, they will start putting enemies into the platforming level on the top screen, and you're able to hot swap between the two of them by pressing the X button. You do have a gauge, so you won't have unlimited time in the puzzle section, but you will be able to get down there and match different blocks to eliminate the enemies. But if they do get into the top level, you're going to be fine, because the platforming aspects of the game are fantastic. There's tons of power-ups that you're able to get for Hatsworth. You're able to go through and use your different weapons and assemble a giant robot that runs on T and Steam, and it is just fantastic. Like, legitimately one of my favorite games I've ever played, and probably my proudest moment from working in the video game industry is Henry Hatsworth in the Puzzling Adventure on the Nintendo DS. One of the best mascots ever from the TurboGrafx 16, this is Bonk from Bonk's Adventure. The little caveman with a head made of stone that just headbutts the living hell out of his enemies, rages out when he eats meat, I think. It's meat that makes him mad, if I'm remembering correctly. And it's just a fantastic game. Now, we've seen Bonk all over the place. He was on the NES. We've seen him ported onto the Wii Virtual Console and things like that. It's just a franchise and just a character that I really enjoy. And the games are really well designed. The level design is fantastic. The different abilities that Bonk has, like climbing up a wall with his teeth, that is so creative, and it just looks so incredible on the TurboGrafx. Talk about a console that is just underappreciated in modern audiences. It's kind of forgotten, and that's a shame. One of my goals this year is to actually pick up a TurboGrafx because I really appreciate it, and it's something where I think I'm going to make it happen this year. I don't know how, but I think I'm going to. Bonk is such a great game, though. This is such a wonderful game that just holds up perfectly well, and it's something that just plays as beautifully today as it did back then. There's no real sense of it feeling aged or just like over the hill or anything like that. It just works. Bonk is awesome. Not a console I talk about very often on this channel, but this is Gex on the 3DO from Panasonic, and this is such a clever, fun little game. Now, it's weird, and it's a little bit janky, I'm not going to lie to you, and this might be stretching the phrase holds up a little bit too much, but I'm going with it, because I do want to cover a variety of more consoles on this channel, rather than just giving you kind of the same 5 all the time. And I actually do really enjoy Gex. I really do enjoy it on the 3DO as well, because I think it runs incredibly well. The sound quality is fantastic, the animations in the game are great, the look is wonderful. It really takes advantage of the power of the 3DO and puts out something that's really fun. It can be a little bit grating, the voices can be a little bit much, and it can be a little bit janky with the way the camera moves, but it's not bad by any stretch of the imagination, and after you play for about 5 minutes, you're used to the weird jankiness, and it's just a really fun title. There was a lot of sequels to Gex, and we saw it on various consoles, but it got its start on the 3DO, and I love it there. Any opportunity I can talk about the brilliance that is Monster in My Pocket from Konami, I'm going to take the opportunity. This is based on a toy line from the late 80s or early 90s, and it was a little bit like Kinnikuman or Muscle Men, where you had these tiny little figures that you were able to collect. They didn't have any posability, they didn't have any articulation, they were just little rubber toys, and they were amazing. I absolutely loved them. So to get a video game that was not only based on a toy line I loved, but was actually really good, was awesome. You can play as 2 different characters. You can play as the vampire, which is Dracula, or the monster, which is Frankenstein. And you go through fighting characters from the toy line, which I think is incredible. It's really awesome. The levels have a really good design and are frequently challenging and really fun. The boss fights are excellent. The graphics in the game look spectacular and actually hold up really well to this day. Like, I'm just impressed by the visuals on this game. Really enjoy this one. Monster in My Pocket is absolutely fantastic, and if you haven't played it, it's well worth checking out. I do think this is probably the strangest game on this list. This is Go-Go Beckham Adventure on Soccer Island, and I am not a David Beckham fan. I am not a huge soccer fan. I do support West Ham, but I'm not someone who is going to say they are a diehard of all things football, but I do really like this game, and it's such a creative way to blend sports and platforming into an awesome title. So you play as a character that uses a ball as a weapon, and you're fighting monsters on Soccer Island. It is not necessarily something that's going to be terribly deep. It doesn't really have a fantastically rich storyline. It's just, go. You have to, kill Mr. Woe, and that's basically it. He stole the precious things on the island, and you need to get him back. It's such a fun game, and such a creative use of David Beckham as a character. It's really neat because you actually get to use different football skills. You get to kick the ball at the enemy to defeat them. You can also level up different attributes. It's pretty awesome. I really, really do enjoy this one. It is a weird game. It is decidedly strange, but sometimes weird is what you need, and this one definitely qualifies. On a handheld that is just replete with fantastic platformers, this one stands a little bit apart from other ones by being uniquely itself, and you can't complain about that. I am including Ninja Gaiden on this list, not because it's just an absolutely brilliant platformer, not because it is one of the single best games ever released on the NES, and not because it spun off a phenomenal franchise that still goes strong, at least to the previous generation. No, I am including Ninja Gaiden on this list because it is part of a New Year's resolution. I have never beaten this game. I have never beaten this goddamn game, and I want to do it because I love it so much. But it is one game that, despite the fact that I adore it, despite the fact that I have poured countless hours into this title, I have never beaten. I am just not skilled enough to do it, but I am resolving this year as a 45, almost 46-year-old man to finally beat a game that I first played when I was like 12. And I am excited to do so because, boy, is this game just amazing. It's just seriously one of the best examples of what the NES was capable of doing as far as platformers went. It took a very generic character in Ryu Hayabusa, and you took that character, who was just kind of a blank slate of just a generic ninja, and you put him in these just fantastical level designs with amazing power-ups, fun boss fights, challenging jumps, amazing music, and just across the board, a solid title. I love it. I can't wait to beat it. And I am just excited to get back to Ninja Gaiden in 2025. I think my favorite platformer released on the original PlayStation was Tomba from Whoopee Camp. This was a game that initially captivated me because of its advertising campaign, because you never really saw characters featuring pink as a main color unless you were, a huge Bret the Hitman Hart fan, which who among us wasn't. But Tomba was a character that was a caveman. He had shocking pink hair. The clay design of the ads was really neat. It looked a little bit different than what you normally saw in video game magazines. And it was just something that I was really, really excited to try out. So when it finally released and I picked it up, I got an amazing platformer. It was a really solid game that had some incredible level design, some really funny writing, and just brilliant gameplay. The look of the game was wonderful. It was pixel art on the PlayStation, so it just sang. It was crisp as hell. The music in the game was great. There were some really entertaining different events that you were able to have happen and different abilities that you're able to earn for Tomba that just worked. We actually got a release of this recently on modern consoles from Limited Run Games, and it's really cool to see it still observed and still loved to this day. The original is my favorite. There was a sequel as well, but you can't go wrong with either of them or the re-release on modern consoles because it's just such a phenomenal game and just such a different take and different interpretation of what a platformer can be. Rivaling Go-Go Beckham, this one, Kabuki Quantum Fighter on the NES, is up there for the weird value because it's not just a traditional platformer, it's a game where you play as a cyber kabuki performer that goes into a computer to fight viruses with your hair. Yes, it's a very strange game, but boy is it brilliant. It is an absolutely fantastic title that has some really challenging platforming moments, some great combat, and it has a really unique look that kind of sets itself apart from other NES platformers. It works just incredibly well. I love it. Now, this was actually based on a film called Zapang for the Famicom release, but since that didn't come out over here, they put it out as just Kabuki Quantum Fighter, which is, again, a strange, strange game. But I really do love it. You're able to collect different chips to give you different weaponry, which I think is really neat. It allows you to have a little bit more of a unique playstyle as opposed to just running and slashing with your hair. You actually get some different power-ups, which I think is really cool. It's a fantastic game, and it's not one that I hear talked about often enough. I really do adore this game. If you're looking for a fun and inexpensive NES title, Kabuki Quantum Fighter is a great platformer to add to your collection. You know, one of the games that I don't hear enough people talk about often on YouTube is Rocket Knight Adventures. Now, while people are quick to point to games like Super Mario Bros. 3 or Mega Man or Sonic as fantastic platformers, and rightfully so, those games deserve all the accolades they receive, I need to call out Rocket Knight Adventures because it is legitimately one of the best platformers on the Sega Genesis. First off, it's from Konami, and when this was released, Konami actually had a really good reputation of excellent video games. It has some really ambitious gameplay elements where it's not just a traditional side-scrolling platformer, you actually have locomotion changes where Sparkster is able to blast off and shoot up into the sky or into more difficult-to-reach areas. The animations in the game are fantastic, the look of the game is wonderful. The music in the game is also really good, like it hits every single note, and it's one of those games when I look back at the 16-bit generation, specifically my time on the Genesis, Rocket Knight is one of those games that just stands out to me and just makes me appreciate that phenomenal generation of video games. If you've never played this one, it's available to this day. Like, it released on the Switch as an eShop release earlier this year, or earlier last year. It's a new year now. But it is a wonderful title, and it's just a fantastic gameplay experience. Check it out if you haven't played it. No, not the hellaciously expensive one. We are going here with the Flintstones, The Rescue of Dino and Hoppy on the NES. I really enjoy the Flintstones games. I think there's something very creative here that Taito did that isn't really realized by this franchise anywhere else, because this is kind of where they died a death. Like, we got these games and we got Burger Time at Bedrock, but that's pretty much it as far as Flintstones games goes. And it's a shame because Taito really had something magical here. Like, they managed to capture the feel, the distinct feel of a Flintstones cartoon in video game form. Whether it was the locomotion of how Fred moved, the way he ducked by dropping his head down into his shirt instead of like crouching over. It was just a really creative and really amazing way to embrace that franchise, embrace that IP, and make something that worked, both bridging the gap from that 1960s cartoon series to a 1991 video game. It's a fantastic title. Now, Surprise at Dinosaur Peak is also fantastic, but it is, you know, you have to like sell a kidney or put out a second mortgage on your house, and you don't really want to do that because that's way too much money. And while this one here is a little bit pricey, it's not nearly as expensive as that one, and it's such a fun title, and it's just a really perfect way of showing why the NES was so great at platformers. Don't look any further than The Rescue of Dino and Hoppy.
The platformer, I mean, you can't get better than that. It is classic gaming for a reason. It is something that extends all the way back to the Atari 2600. Everyone understands run, jump, avoid the obstacle. I don't think there's anything better. Let me know in the comments down below your favorite platformers from retro consoles that you feel still hold up to this day. There's so many out there. Everyone's list could be unique. I love having these conversations with you guys. I love being able to talk to you about the games I love. So if this is your first time here, I'd encourage you to click the subscribe button down below. Do a couple videos a week. I'm also doing a short every day. Love to have you stick around, join the community. Till next time, folks, I've been Jay. Appreciate you spending a little bit of time with me. Remember to play more games, stay square, and take care. I'll talk to you soon.